Coming up today, President Park Geun-hye urges North Korea to scrap plans to launch a rocket next month. She also uses her speech at the UN General Assembly to press Japan over its historical wrongdoings. With the four-day Chuseok holiday almost over, traffic flowing back into Seoul is forecast to pick up one last time, with the heaviest congestion expected later this afternoon. Plus, is there life on Mars? Trickles of water on the planet's surface make finding life on Mars that much more likely. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Tuesday, the 29th of September. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this afternoon, President Park Geun-hye gave her highly anticipated keynote speech at the UN General Assembly on Monday local time. As expected, President Park used it as an opportunity to warn North Korea about the consequences of further provocations. Hwang Sung-hee reports from New York.
President Park Geun-hye says North Korea's nuclear ambition is one of the most urgent issues to be addressed by the international community. Speaking at the UN General Assembly on Monday, President Park pledged to support Pyongyang if it abandoned its nuclear program.
북한이 과감하게 핵을 포기하고 개방과 협력의 길로 나온다면 대한민국은 국제사회와 힘을 모아 북한이 경제를 개발하고 주민들의 삶의 질을 향상시킬 수 있도록 적극 지원할 것입니다.
The keynote speech comes amid Pyongyang's nuclear threats and speculation of a possible long-range rocket launch next month, which would be in violation of UN resolutions. President Park warned that a fresh provocation will only damage the hard-won atmosphere for inter-Korean dialogue and undermine efforts to restart the long-stalled six-party nuclear talks. The Koreas are set to hold reunions for war-separated families in October, following a landmark inter-Korean agreement last month.
특히 이산가족 상봉을 비롯한 인도주의 문제가 정치, 군사적 이유로 더 이상 외면되어서는 안 될 것입니다.
President Park stressed that a peaceful reunification will ultimately lead to a nuclear-free and prosperous Korean peninsula where humanitarian rights are guaranteed. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News, New York.
Now, staying with President Park's speech at the UN, the South Korean leader also urged Japan to squarely face history, saying there's no way to move forward without doing so. Son Jung-in reports.
과거를 인지하지 못하고 미래를 열어갈 수 있는 길은 없습니다.
That was the message President Park Geun-hye had for Japan in her keynote speech at the UN General Assembly on Monday. More than 200,000 women, mostly Korean, were forced to serve the Japanese military before and during World War II. Time is running out for the elderly victims to receive proper compensation and an apology from the Japanese government, with just 47 registered comfort women left in South Korea.
이분들이 살아 계실 때 마음의 상처를 치유할 수 있는 해결책이 조속히 마련되어야 합니다.
President Park also touched upon Japan's controversial set of security bills, stressing the importance of transparency.
이번에 통과된 일본의 방위 안보 법률은 영내 국가 간 설린 우호 관계와 이 지역의 평화와 안정에 도움이 되는 방향으로 투명성 있게 이행되어 나가야 할 것입니다.
The bills allow Japan to fight alongside its allies even when the country is not under attack. This has sparked concerns in Korea about Tokyo's possible misuse of its newly found power, considering the country's past militarism. The remark comes as the leaders of the two countries are inching closer to holding their first summit this fall on the sidelines of planned trilateral talks with China. 손정인, 아리랑 뉴스.
President Park Geun-hye has pledged to expand South Korea's contribution to UN peace missions at a peacekeeping summit held on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly on Monday. President Park said Seoul will deploy an additional engineering unit to assist with reconstruction activities in conflict zones. Korea currently has around 630 troops deployed around the world. She added, Korea also plans to provide deployable Level 2 hospital equipment throughout the African Union and steadily scale up its financial contributions to the missions. The summit, organized by the United States, was attended by US President Barack Obama, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, and Chinese President Xi Jinping, among others. The crisis in Syria dominated tense discussions between US President Barack Obama and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. Meeting one-on-one on Monday for the first time in 2 years, Obama reiterated Washington's stance that a peace plan must not include a return to the status quo in Syria under President Bashar al-Assad. Putin made clear at his speech to the Assembly earlier in the day that he thinks there's no alternative to cooperating with Assad's military to defeat Islamic State. His comments come as Russia has been sending warplanes to bases in Syria. Speaking at a press conference after the talks, Putin said the meeting was constructive, practical and surprisingly frank, adding that they'd found a lot of common ground. Putin also said he was committed to de-escalating the 17-month-long conflict in Ukraine. Now on to the latest traffic conditions in Korea on this last day of the 4-day Chuseok Thanksgiving holiday. Let's take a look at the map. If you were to leave for Seoul from Busan now, it will take you an estimated 5 hours. 10 minutes from Daejeon. It will take you slightly over 2 hours. From the southwestern city of Gwangju, expect to be sat in the car for around 4 hours. And if you're setting off from Gangneung on the east coast, you'll need to factor in 3 hours. So it will take just a little bit longer than a normal weekday. The Korea Expressway Corporation estimates around 460,000 vehicles will enter the Seoul metropolitan area on this Tuesday. Traffic on northbound highways is expected to peak between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. before easing from around 8 p.m. Now, the International Monetary Fund is expected to lower its global economic forecast for this year and the next as exporters face increasing threats from weakening commodity prices. Kwon So-ah has this report.
The goal of 3.3% global economic growth this year seems to be fading away. That was the previous forecast made by the International Monetary Fund, but a new study released by the organization Monday seems to indicate a downward revision is coming soon. Weakening commodity prices are threatening countries that are highly reliant on the production and export of commodities, particularly metals and energy resources such as crude oil. According to the IMF's formula, a decline in commodity prices could cut commodity exporters' GDP by nearly 1 percentage point per year over the next 3 years, compared to the 3-year period from 2012 to 2014. Commodity prices surged for around a decade in the early 2000s due to high demand from emerging countries, but prices have been dropping sharply in recent years. Along with slowing growth in China, which doesn't appear like it'll improve anytime soon, the IMF is seeing the global economic recovery moving at a slower pace too. In an interview with French magazine Les Echos, IMF chief Christine Lagarde said a projection of 3.3% growth this year is, quote, no longer realistic. She added the same goes for the 3.8% projection for 2016, but that growth will hover above the 3% level. The IMF's flagship World Economic Outlook is to be published next week. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Now, Korea's top 10 business groups saw their labor costs rise last year, accounting for 8% of their sales amid a prolonged economic slump and sluggish sales. Local market researcher Chaebol.com says the combined personnel expenses paid by the conglomerate's listed subsidiaries increased by an annual average of 6.6% to $51 billion. The labor costs include wages, retirement benefits and welfare expenditures. The ratio of personnel expenses to sales also rose from 7.6% in 2013 to 8% last year. The rise is being attributed to weak sales growth of less than 1% over the same period. More than 2 million Audi-branded diesel cars have now been swept up in the VW emissions scandal. Audi says 1.6-litre and 2-litre turbo diesel models in the A1, A3, A4, A6, TT, Q3 and Q5 ranges contain software designed to cheat emissions tests. On top of this, another VW Group automaker, Skoda, says 1.2 million of its cars are affected. Skoda has yet to give a model breakdown, though. In related news, German prosecutors have begun a probe against Volkswagen's former CEO. German authorities say Martin Winterkorn will be investigated over allegations of fraud in the sale of cars with manipulated emissions data. Apple has silenced its naysayers with huge first weekend sales of its latest iPhones, the 6S and the 6S Plus. The company announced Monday that it had shifted more than 13 million units during the first weekend thanks to strong sales in China. Apple launched the new models in China around a month earlier than the models it launched last year, when the company sold over 10 million smartphones in their opening weekend. Apple CEO Tim Cook said the latest figures were phenomenal. Apple is set to release the new phones in 40 more countries on October 9th. Consumers in Korea are going to have to wait, though, as a release date for Korea has not yet been set. North Korea is about to trot out its latest weaponry as part of a massive military parade to mark the 70th anniversary of the founding of its ruling Workers' Party. Our Jim Young-gil has more.
North Korea's last major military parade was 2 years ago in July 2013, and it was held to mark the 60th anniversary of the Korean War armistice. The parade was a show of military might as the North trotted out Scud, Nodong, and Musudan ballistic missiles, as well as helicopter bombers.
When the time comes to fight, we will use our built-up deterrence capabilities to destroy and sweep out our enemies and accomplish the historic feat of unifying the homeland.
Now, North Korea is gearing up to hold another massive military parade to mark the 70th anniversary of its ruling Workers' Party on October 10th. Just like last time, North Korea experts expect an intimidating spectacle of military might and patriotic fervor, involving wave after wave of goose-stepping soldiers, tank batteries, and missile launchers. However, unlike in 2012, when the North paraded a KN-08 intercontinental ballistic missile that many experts suspected was a fake, analysts say the weaponry on display this time around could be the real thing. They expect the show of equipment to include a KN-09 multiple rocket launcher, new 300mm multiple rocket launchers, and drones.
There's a high possibility that North Korea will reveal a 200-kilometer range 300mm artillery system and a new ballistic missile better than the road-mobile KN-08.
Analysts will also be keeping an eye out for signs of progress in the North's weapons systems, and in particular whether it's developed long-range missiles tipped with nuclear warheads. Jim Young-gil, Arirang News.
NASA scientists have discovered strong evidence that flowing liquid water exists on Mars, and this raises the possibility for life to be on what was long thought to be a dry planet. Park Geun-hye tells us more.
Salty liquid water flows on Mars at least during the summer, increasing the possibility that life could exist on the red planet. According to NASA scientists on Monday, scientists first made the discovery when they found streaks of hydrated minerals that form only when water is present. The streaks appear in the warmest Martian months, when temperatures climb above -23 degrees Celsius, and fade when temperatures drop.
Is that Mars is not the dry, arid planet that we thought of in the past. Today we're going to announce that under certain circumstances, liquid water has been found on Mars.
Long ago, Mars was partly covered in water, with rivers, lakes, maybe an ocean, but it went through a major climate change 3 billion years ago and lost its surface water. Back in 2008, scientists confirmed the existence of frozen water on the planet. But the new evidence of liquid water lends credence to the idea that there could be living organisms on Mars today. Researchers say it's very likely that microscopic life exists in the crust of the planet, but further exploration is needed. Scientists will also need to learn more about the water's chemistry. The source of the water remains a mystery as well. Scientists say the minerals may be absorbing water vapor from the thin Martian atmosphere, or there might be a source of melting ice beneath the surface. The prospect of liquid water is an important finding for future human missions to Mars. NASA plans to send American astronauts on the red planet in the mid-2030s, and the presence of water is expected to make the trip easier and less expensive. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
Well, those are stories we have for you on this Tuesday afternoon here in Seoul. For more of the latest, don't forget to check out the website arirang.com/news. If you're watching us in Korea, do enjoy the final few hours of your Chuseok holiday. Goodbye.